near the end of the first book of the Bible, in Genesis chapter 49, is the death of Jacob, whose other name was Israel. So he's the one that gave the name to the nation of Israel. And it tells about him bringing all of his sons around him, and he gave a prepared statement to every one of them, and it was different for each one. But the Bible line in Genesis 49 says that he gave instructions. I mean, that's marvelous. Here long ago was a man who knew he was going to die and gave final instructions. That was very different with David, and his story is in the Old Testament book of 1 Kings. And his death was obvious. He was old, he was going to die soon, and he wasn't going to talk about it, and he wasn't going to do anything about it. And those around him came and addressed the issue with him. So we're told that Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet and his wife Bathsheba, they teamed together, and they all came and they said to him, you need to make plans. And he especially needed to make plans for his succession on who would be the next king of Israel. And he took their advice. You know, ancient kings didn't often take the advice of family and advisors, but he did, and he gave wonderful instructions, and then Solomon succeeded him. And I think those are two different models that we can look at. On the one hand, we have someone who prepares and gives instructions, like Jacob, and on the other hand, we have family members that don't want to talk about it. And if that's the case, then sometimes clergy and family members and friends need to get together and figure out an appropriate manner in which to address the issues. I think that we have the privilege and the right to die as we choose to. So adult children don't have to tell parents how to die and how to deal with their illnesses. So they can advise them and they can help them. But respect requires that if people really don't want to talk about it, then they shouldn't have to talk about it. For the family, that there are processes in place is wonderfully helpful, because often children and spouses, they're frightened. They don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to give up too soon. They don't want to hold on too long. And if it's been discussed, and especially if it's been documented in writing, that is really a gift to family. The line that is especially noteworthy in Psalm 23 is, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that God will be with us. And it's really interesting. It's not spoken of as death, but the valley of the shadow of death. And you know, we were designed to live, and we ought to want to live, and life is a gift from God, and that's why we hold on. We should hold on. That's the way it's supposed to be. But we recognize the reality that we all also die, and I believe that God often gives a dying grace. That is a perspective that we wouldn't normally have at other times, and a gift to help us through a difficult valley, the valley of the shadow of death. As evangelicals, our very name, the evangel, is about the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we frequently say to people that believe in Jesus Christ as your Savior, and when you die, you'll go to heaven. So that's central to our message. And if we talk about that in terms of your spiritual relationship with God, then we ought to be first in line to also be talking about when we actually do die and what are the surrounding circumstances. The Evangelical Leaders Survey is a monthly survey that I conduct, and it's of evangelical leaders across America. So we asked the question, it wasn't so much about end-of-life directives, it was about the termination of life under the worst of circumstances, like severe pain or the expectation of a soon death. And we just asked them whether that was okay. We got a flood of comments that were voluntarily added with the survey. And I just sense that people, they really do want to talk about it, and many of them do have advanced directives. I do, my wife does. My primary care comes at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and every time you sign in for anything there, they ask you. So if you're going for a blood test, an annual physical, whatever it is, they ask if you have that advanced directive in place. As long as someone is able to make a competent decision on their own behalf, then they should do it. Unfortunately, that's not always possible, and therefore, in an advanced directive, we should have the privilege of setting what the process is. And there's a difference between setting what the process is and actually specifying the conditions and the outcome. So I know of one individual who has specified that if I am in a comatose state for 45 days, that after 45 days, then life support is to be removed. I'm not sure whether I would make that determination at that specific number, but he did, and that's fine that he did that. The process is that we indicate that a physician may contribute to the decision, a spouse, or someone with durable power of attorney. So we can choose that, and I appreciate that, and I want us to be able to make those kind of choices. Because evangelicals are part of the constituency of the United States, it's not as if we, on a subject like this, are going to operate unilaterally. So it is most helpful that television, that hospitals, that others cooperate in this, and as it becomes part of the conversation. I have no doubt that evangelicals will participate and will do this, but it's got to be part of the broader conversation. It's not as if some churches are going to do it. Can we contribute to that flow? We can contribute to it, and we should, and I think we increasingly will. But it's got to be in partnership with others. It's not just that people don't have advanced directives. A lot of people don't have wills. And they die, and that means that probate is going to be determined by the government. Sometimes people who don't want the government involved in their lives have a setup that the government will be involved in their deaths because they haven't gotten a will in advance. So we need to address that issue as well. The great expense in life, medically, is usually at the end of life. So a high proportion of all life expenditures is in the last 12 to 18 months. I think, from what I understand has happened in La Crosse, that expenses have been brought down, but it has not been because of imposed rules. It's not been a loss of dignity, that it's been a win-win all the way around. And that's very respectful. It's respecting the economic aspects of it, but it's also respecting the familial relationships, the spiritual values, and the individual's choices. What we need to do is just continually advance the conversation. That's the way we change people's behavior. That's the way we change cultures and countries, is just advancing the conversation. And that's what Healthy Choices is about. It's not a dictation of what people should do. It's a call to a conversation and letting people choose what they want.